Okay, we're on air. So we'll go ahead and start here. Just say welcome to Jon Strickland. So today we're talking with Jon Strickland, the leader of the American Hook Style Wrestling. John, could you please tell us what what made you create this organization, and tell us about the evolution from Billy Wick's Foundation to now? Because up until just a few months ago, your organization was called the Billy Wicks Foundation. So please tell us what happened.
Well, as you know, a lot of people know that Billy's health's not been the best of lately. It's not where we like for it to be, or he would like for it to be. So I think he started thinking about down the road, and I guess past his time here, and then eventually, my time and everybody else's time. I mean, it's just how life is, right? But he started thinking about the future of it. If 100 from years from now, it's just about his name being on there. He said, he liked the idea of having an association. I mean, it was his brainchild. I mean, really, I mean, he was the one who wanted to do it. But at the end of the day, after I think he saw his name constantly on everything, I think he kind of was like, okay, I think it was one of those things like, you know, feel like a narcissist maybe and didn't want to be that way. I don't know if that's the best way to put it, but didn't just thought that Henry Cullen and Farmer Burns and all these guys are in that tradition. Even guys like Joe Pasendak, Tony Morelli, Charlie Card guys also had taught him that it's a style that mainly like 98% probably of what I do. Cash wrestling I learned from him, but I'd also say I've been fortunate to be able to pick the mind of Dick Cardinal, been able to pick Roy Wood's brain a little bit. So we just saw within the future of things down the road. We're trying to see down the road that we wanted it to be more about the American style, but no name particular. Kind of where we just thought that was best served. We didn't want it to be. I think the word he used was cult because it sounds like a cult when you just put my name on there. So he was just pops was like, hey. So we talked about changing that and things of that nature. It was originally his idea, like I said, to do an association, and I'll touch on that really quickly. Why? Back in 2000, hold on. Back in 2000, and let's see. Oh, it's like 4. I was trying to see the date on this. He did these. He had these certifications made, and and I'll show you. Actually, I can show it right here for the camera. Excuse me for a second. So basically, I don't know if you can see this. I had these made. Signed by him and everything. Anyway, so it was because he was concerned. There's question, and in those days you have to keep in mind there was no catch wrestling tournaments or a lot of interaction with catch wrestlers like that we've had here in the last couple of years, like with Wigan and you guys out on the West Coast. So he decided to do these certificates, and unfortunately, several of the guys here, when I see several, 4 or 5 guys got certifications, and then a few students he had who didn't live here locally did, and a couple of guys didn't live up to what they were supposed to do, and he made I don't think it was a poor choice by him. It was a poor choice by them. It was kind of a thing of kind of an honor system. Like, I'm going to go ahead and do this, but you have to fulfill this requirement, but I'm going to go ahead and give this to you now. And I mean, we all know that, unfortunately, sometimes, and they might not have done it intentionally, but things backfire. things don't work out. So we decided to kind of get some kind of quality control of the situation, who's who and who actually trained with him and who continued training with him. And a lot of people get this mistake, and I'll say this real quick. I'll throw this in there. If you've never went to school and you call up a calculus professor and want them to teach calculus to you, and they try to tell you calculus problems or work them out through a long distance method, then it's probably going to be very difficult for you to understand it. But if you've already taken, all your prerequisite maths and you have an understanding of a certain level of calculus, then you certainly should be able to learn from them. If you can't, then that's on you, I think. So there, we all learn in different ways. So a lot of guys, I think, when the older that Pops got, decided, well, if he can't get down and show anything, he doesn't have anything to teach, and that's just horse crap. Because I learned a lot of good stuff that he wasn't getting down hands on, and all he's got to do is be able to see you do it and tell you, yeah, you're doing it wrong, or yeah, you're doing it right, or and like I told a guy the other day, a student of mine in North Dakota, I told him, I said, I don't care what move it is, if you'll drill it a few thousand times, I promise you'll learn it. And that might sound absurd number of times. A lot of people think that's over the top, but if you drill something a couple thousand times, you should pretty well master that move, I would imagine. So that's kind of what happened. And then going forward, when he created the association, we decided to come up with a name, and that was the name we chose because we thought the guys who trained under him, but I think pretty much everybody who today knows who that is and who it isn't. But we wanted to make sure that there's one thing in learning the wrestling, there's another thing in learning to teach the wrestling. It goes with anything. And it could be any sport. You could be a good football player but not be able to coach. You have to learn that. I don't know, my guys now would tell you that started with me several years ago. Just like you do as we do as students, you get better the longer you're in it. And my coaching certainly has improved, from where it was. And that's as human beings, that's all we can do anyway. So that said, we wanted to make sure that we had some quality control of the situation. And then with the name thing, we just didn't like name specific. We wanted it to be, and even with him, even though Henry Colin, like I said, was his greatest, had the greatest impact on him as a coach and teacher, guys, like he told me, Joe Pazendak might have got on the mat with him more than Henry did, or Tony Morelli. So those were, when he thought about that, he said, yeah, I'd rather not do names. So let's not a human being specific name.
Okay. So recently you made a little bit of an announcement there. You might be having another coach join your association. Is that true?
Yeah. I've known Dick Cardinal for a while. And we've had tons of conversations, and of course Pops has known him for a long time, and they would talk, and so he and actually the event in Los Angeles, the first CWA event in LA, of course Pops I knew he couldn't make the trip because of health issues of the flight, and so my next person, my go-to person to corner me was Dick Cardinal, and unfortunately he couldn't either make it down in that time. So he and I have been in talks for off and on for a while, and he's given me a lot of wrestling advice. He'll say, hey John, try this sometime, and try this move, grab this part of the arm instead of there, or do this with your hips, or don't, and then you go and do it and you go, okay, yeah, that worked real well, so his reputation was already large, but once I started kind of picking his brain wrestling wise. That I certainly knew he knew what he was talking about, knew his stuff, and so we were talking a while back, and I mentioned to him kind of what was going on, and asked him if he, if he would like to be involved, and he said certainly he would like to help me any way he could, and so I'm glad to be able to have that association with him, and he's a super nice guy. You won't meet anybody nicer than Dick Cardinal. He's just a very nice, well-spoken gentleman. As they would say, he's a gentleman's gentleman.
So basically, from what you've well, actually, let's go ahead and introduce the Cardinal a little bit to people who might not know who he is. Could you give a little bit of background about him?
Yeah, he lives up in the northwest part of the country. Dick started wrestling at a very young age. Started wrestling amateurs in the Washington State area. He won the Pacific Northwest tournament. I think I think it was in '48. As an amateur tournament. Instead of giving it a trophy or a sword or a belt or anything, the award was an hour-long private session with a gentleman named Robin Reed. And Robin Reed arguably might be the greatest amateur champion in U.S. history. A lot of folks don't know who he is. A lot of wrestlers don't know who he is. But Robin Reed was a 135er who pinned the world heavyweight gold medalist. I'll repeat that. A 135er pinned the world heavyweight gold medalist. Beating him on points is unheard of. A 135er pinning him, a gold medalist. So Robin Reed, I think possibly was from that alone maybe made him, that's an amazing feat. So he trained with Robin Reed, and then after he also won this tournament, he had met a gentleman, introduced himself by the name of August Sepp, and August Sepp was from Estonia and was living in the United States and worked for an AT show, and he invited Dick down to his gym to come train. And it's different in those days. Those days it was kind of an invitation. It wasn't, you didn't walk in and sign up. They had to invite you to come train or whatnot. So Dick goes down there and trains, and little did he know that what he was kind of getting into. He said at first, then there's August Sepp and a guy named Ben Sherman, and then guys like Vic Short and Bud Anderson. And Ben Sherman was many consider one of the best wrestlers too. One of the best catch wrestlers, certainly in the United States, maybe in the world, pound for pound. Certainly can make an argument for Sherman as one of those top guys. And when I already knew this about Sherman just from historians I knew in wrestling, who had talked to me about him, and then hearing other wrestlers talk about him. And and just in a casual conversation with Dick one day, we were talking about Sherman, and Dick just says that he's sitting there preparing dinner for his wife and tells me, I can hear the oven going and he's cooking. He's like, yeah, John. He's like, yeah, Ben and I, we wrestled every day for X amount of years, and he goes, even though you're not competing in the gym, he goes, look, nobody goes in the gym. You never spar in the gym wanting to lose. Everybody always tries to beat each other. And kind of chuckled, and he's like, yeah, Ben and I wrestled hundreds of times. He goes, I guess we broke about half. He took about half. I took about half. And he said it without pausing, without joking. There was no ego in his voice. It was just nonchalant, like, yeah, he beat me some, I beat him some, and yeah, he was a good wrestler. And he went on to talk about other guys, and I'm sitting there a little frozen, like during the headlines, like I don't know if you realize what that probably defines then, because if you're holding your own, you're beating Ben Sherman, whether you guys are shooting 100% or going 90%, whatever it might be. that case, this still certainly makes you a very, very good wrestler, very dangerous wrestler. And also I'd say too that August, I learned it in Estonia, but he'd also spent some time in Wigan, and Ben Sherman has spent time in Wigan. So, there's that connection, just like you have with Billy Wicks, with Burns back to O'Connor going from the UK to the United States, and then you have, of course, Dick and we're learning from August Sepp and Sherman and these guys, and they're all had their connections over there too. So I think for myself, that's the neat part. I still today have the ability to be in connection with guys like Roy Wood and Bromley and stuff. It's fascinating, and it has to make you a little bit happy to know that this has gone on for over a century, and we still have some good connections there.
Yeah, based on all the people you know and all the training you've done, could you give people an idea of like moves that are characteristic of catch wrestling? It seems like nowadays more and more people are coming out of the woodwork claiming to be catch wrestling instructors, but it seems like there's a lot of variety in what technique they're doing. You mentioned how there's a lot of connection between Wigan and the United States in regards to this actual lineage of catch wrestling and how it spread. Since you're very familiar and training a long time, could you kind of tell us, like based on your experience and also speaking with the older wrestlers, what catch wrestling characteristics looks like?
Yeah. I think there's always it seems like people always have some good ideas of what it is, but it's finding that exact perfect, is this it? You'll hear somebody might say, they might say 20 things and 2 things of it could be correct, or 18 things of it might be correct and 2 wrong. But yeah, so I spent some time down in Florida with a gentleman named Diesel Wilberto, who had spent some time in Japan, and there was guys that were training at Berto's school when they're in the United States, guys like Carl Greco, also known as Carl Malenko. He fought Pride and did some of the Japanese shows. They had a connection with Fujiwara in these company over in Japan, some of the wrestling promotions. So I spent a little time at Berto training. He basically used a lot of the same holds that Billy Wicks would teach me, and some of the ones that Dick Cardinal I knew does as well. So wasn't just flying blind there, but I spent some time before I met Pops with a couple of other people. I'd rather not mention their names, because they're not even worthy to mention, truthfully. In my opinion, I mean, the wrestling wasn't there, and there wasn't, if you know it, you'll show it. If you don't, then you'll just shut up and pretend, I guess. But so, guys, I would say that with Berto, one of the things that he told me up front that they did collective things because he was doing things for MMA mainly, and I don't know how much time he spent with Fuji on the wrestling end of everything, but he certainly knew a lot of good submission halls, and he was a really excellent guy, really, really nice guy, very, very tough guy. And then when I met Pops, some of those holds are the same, from like the 3/4 Nelson to a double wrist lock to a guillotine headlock to a toe hold, which we never had names for different toe holds. They were either inside or outside toe hold, which basically would be like means the foot went either inside or it went to the outside. And that might be from a lot of different positions. We didn't call them a bunch of things. They were down with these names that I hear with a lot of stuff now. So, so the difference is with Billy that we, some of the things that knew from amateur wrestling were still prominent with him in the sense of, there was no, well, how do you hit a double wrist lock from guard? Well, that's not part of really catch wrestling, so I don't know how you would do that, because it's like, you never did jiu-jitsu or judo or anything. So with Pops, we was getting down in wrestling all through class. That was the way we did our warm-up before we wrestled, was to wrestle, and then we wrestled. And we just kept doing it over and over and over and over and over, just a lot of repetitions of it. And so with him, and the same thing with Dick Cardinal, you hear them talking about having those takedowns, having their escapes, whether they're sit outs or their switches or there's some kind of shoulder roll or a side roll, stand up, and then behind the guy, you're talking about your series of certain breakdowns and rides. But there was not, Billy Wicks joked when I first got with him, and Billy was, he would say, like, at the time he was coaching out of Johnny Husky School in Asheville. And Johnny was already a really gifted grappler, had a lot of time in grappling and wrestling, and he used a lot of, he said to me one day, he's like, Johnny knows probably like 10 times the amount of submission holds that I know. And the thing with Pops is the holds that he knew them, and if he caught you in them, you weren't getting away, and that was all she wrote. And they were, he kind of changed the way I viewed it, because I always thought of catch wrestling as a wrestling system of 1,000 submission holds. And I went away after years of training with him. I would now say that my definition would be catch wrestling is wrestling, knowing some very dangerous hooks, and being able to apply them in different situations and different positions with different different scenarios you're facing. One of the things I see a lot of guys today, like the key lock, that a lot of people call it. They'll call it key lock, and I'll see guys doing it and they call it a submission. Well, it's really not a submission. That's actually a pin. I guess there are guys that might submit to it if it hurts bad enough, right? If it's hit hard, it can hurt. I've had it put on me. In fact, when I remember one time Pops had me down, and we were in this place up in Waynesville. He worked at part-time called the Old Army Recreation Center, and there was a judo club at practice out of there, so there were already some mats in there, and I had went by to see him, and he was like, okay, he told me, he's like, get down, and I'm gonna put you in this. And he puts me in his key lock, and I'm about to scream, and he stops, and he's like, are you effing kidding me? This is a pin. So, yeah, boy, that really kind of sucked, I was like, wow, I guess I'm a wimp, but it really hurt. So that's what I would say, like, from, I would see things like, there was the Submission Master DVD set that a lot of people on that Fujiwara put out. There's a lot of the holds that he does were the same things that Billy Wicks showed. There might be some subtle differences in the holds and stuff like that, and I love that DVD set. I wish there would have been more wrestling in it, but it is what it is. And I thought Fuji did a great job with it. I've always really been a big fan. But so I see a lot of these guys doing this stuff, and it always seems like somebody wants to, like, fill in the blanks. Like, okay, well, I know submission holds, but I can't wrestle, so I'm going to go get an amateur wrestler to teach me how to wrestle. Or I know how to wrestle, so I'm just going to go to jiu-jitsu school and pick up submission holds to match my wrestling. And that's fine. You have all the right to do that. And I'm not saying you shouldn't. Hell, maybe it's better. Who knows? But to call it something that it's not isn't fair. There was a style, and the style was catch, can wrestling. And to say that means anything, that's just not true. It would be no difference if I went there and put on a jacket. It doesn't make me a judo player. I don't know judo. I mean, you know, if I walked up and you know, good analogy. Johnny Ballantyne, who was a professional wrestler, he was strictly a worker. Wasn't a wrestler, but was known for being a very tough guy, a roughneck type guy. He punched Joe Pazendak in a shoot, and Pazendak ended up losing. But doesn't make Valentine the better wrestler. Doesn't make him know more wrestling. He just happened to beat Joe up, which, from my understanding, he never wanted to get near him again after that. I think he knew Pazendak was after him. But, yeah, so today, it's like Billy said to me one day, he goes, you can't control who calls what. I can't stop somebody that want to call this catch wrestling. I don't have authority to say I own this term, catch as catch can, and you can't use it. It's not a stamped trademark. However, I will say, well, that isn't what I was taught. That's not the way we wrestled back in the days. And I'm like, well, just with Henry? He goes, no, with everybody else, whether it was guys like Luthez and Ray Steele or the guys with Henry Colin. It wasn't any of that. It wasn't all these, oh, I've got a chain with all these holds, and it's almost like guys are. It's like saying the alphabet, going from A and getting stuck at C, and then saying, well, I'll jump to Z. And that should be like a last case scenario. Like you're wrestling somebody, you can't control them, and they're kicking your ass wrestling. So then you try to get a hold. Well, that doesn't work. So you keep moving from a hold to a hold to a hold to a hold, hoping you'll finally catch them. And I see a lot of that today. A lot of these guys, and that's fine. I don't care if that's what they want to do. I mean, they might be great at it. I mean, Hickson Gracie would be probably like, most people he would roll with, right? It doesn't make him a catch wrestler. It doesn't make what he does catch. So, anyway, yeah, and I see these things, and I was like, well, you see a lot of younger guys in the younger generation trying to dispute some of those things, and you're just like, well, I'm going to take the word of guys like Dick Cardinal and Billy Wicks and guys who were there. Guys have been around wrestling a lot longer than I have, and a lot longer than anybody they know. And guys like Roy Wood, and he's spending time out in California out there with him. Try not to just drive him crazy talking wrestling all the time. And, we joke around and hanging out in a diner or going down to the beach, just talking, hanging out. But it could tell early on that a lot of the wrestling was similar. And that was even after like just a couple hours just talking, hanging out like at a restaurant. Just talking wrestling. I already knew that we were both talking apples and apples, not apples and oranges. Now, his apples might be red, mine might be a yellow apple or a green apple, or they might be a little different, but they're both apples. So I think that's it. As seen, I think there's a lot of recreation of a style. You see that a lot in the dog world with specific dog breeds. A lot of these dog breeds that went extinct now are suddenly back. Well, they're suddenly back because they're recreations. When something goes extinct, it's damn extinct. I mean, other than that, you're recreating it or trying to. So that being said, again, I didn't get into catch wrestling to try to be the best fighter in the world. I didn't get into catch wrestling to be like an MMA person, and I didn't get into it for any reason besides I like wrestling, and it read up on it, and I was like, hey, yeah, I want to do this.
That's excellent, John. Cool. It's a really great point of view. It's about asking the seniors that have been there, they've been doing it for decades, longer than us. That's a really great point of view. And I do know that one of your guys is going to be having a professional MMA match coming up. Can you tell us about that, who it is, and who they're going up against?
Yeah, this is Matt Tran. He's been with me, I think, since 2007 now, something like that. Anyway, yeah, so Matt, he fights at 135. in MMA. He's fighting Dennis Pavia, I think is his name. It's the promotions, the CEF. It's out of the Boston, Mass area. They liked him up in Boston. He fought there almost 2 years ago, I guess. Now he fought a kid. I can't remember his first name. His last name was Matsuda, and he came over to the U.S. and from Japan, which surprised me. Came here to train in MMA, and I thought, wow, really? Okay, because I was the opposite. I always thought about going over there, but he came over and. He had been, I think he had been on the Ultimate Fighter and had done all these things. And I remember that we were, they have these odds that you can go in on the internet and you can bet. And I didn't tell him that before the fight. I was like, you got like a 3% chance of winning according to everyone betting. So I'm going to bet on you. You don't lose. So Matt went up there and basically did what I thought he would do, and he beat him. And so after that, they kind of they wanted him to come back to that area, and so this was brought up the other day to us, and one of those things where it's like it's going to be on AXS, I think it's called, or Access, something television. It's going to be on live. It's August 15th, I believe. I'll know more as we get closer to the exact date. And I think everybody knows me on social media. Knows I'm not a huge MMA fan, but I like winning. I don't care if we're playing Xbox. So we're going to go up there and try to win, and go up there and go up there to do our best.
All right, great. That sounds really good, John. Well, thanks for taking time to tell us about the new developments with American Style Wrestling. Do you guys have a new website set up, or how do we get in contact there?
That's common. We're still the BillyHicksFoundation.com. You can go on there and email us, or we're on American Hook Style on Facebook. I believe I'd have to chat with Cody Wood because he's kind of over on social media. I don't know that I use Twitter really. Probably should, but I think he's probably running it on Twitter as American Hook Style. Or like I said, if you don't find it there, we're the Billy Hicks Foundation on the internet. We're the BillyHicksFoundation.org. You can go on there, see what we do. Feel free to shoot me an email, and I'll try to respond in a good, timely fashion as I can.
All right. Well, I know you're having a new baby coming up, so please be patient on your reply.
Well, yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, that's coming up. So I've been pretty busy, and I've had a lot of things going on. And it's not always, like I told somebody, just because you have a lot of crazy things going on doesn't mean it's always bad. So I've really, since last fall, things have just been going. Just had a family father who was in really, really poor health. Then this thing with Pops, he started having some health issues, and of course my wife had dropped the news on me last year, or last, well, I think it was November. Now she walked in and said, "What are you doing next July?" I said, "I don't know what I'm doing tomorrow." And it was like, "Do we want a free trip somewhere?" And she's, "Oh no, what do you think about having a baby?" And I was like, "I don't really want to have one myself. Are you going to have one?" And she's like, "Yeah." So, of course I wanted a kid. I mean, I didn't want to have a kid personally because that'd be a little awkward. I might get paid, though, a lot of money. It might be a weird science experiment, right? So they'd pay me to have me in a lab, I guess, for something like that. But, yeah, so, man, I appreciate it. Have another kid. I got a 3-year-old, so hopefully, we'll see what happens. I'm not one of those parents who require their kids to do what I do. Certainly, I don't even recommend it, but if they want to do it, then we'll deal with that when it comes. We'll deal with that when that time comes. So.
Okay. Well, thanks. I think we'll go ahead and we'll cut it here, and then we'll be back for any future developments.
All right. Sounds good, Raul.
Okay. Thank you, John.
All right. Take care, my friend.
You too.